This is October 2nd, 2012. This is the fourth episode of the Revolutionary Journal. Last week, you may have noticed that I was not available. I did not make a show because I was feeling, unfortunately, under the weather. Uh, Seems like someone's going around, or maybe it's just the rain. I don't know. But yeah, so this is the fourth episode, and today we are interviewing a friend of the show, Russell Scott. How you doing today, Russell?
I'm okay. Pretty good.
Oh,
Glad to be here.
good to hear. Good to hear.
I feel great myself.
Even better, man. Even better. So Russell Scott hosts the West Coast Truth, and you have something like what three or yeah, it's like something like three other shows as well, or
Well, it's easy to have lots of shows when you're the producer and you're creating them out of scratch and from scratch, rather.
Mhm.
You've got YouTube to broadcast on. This is the 21st century. Most of us have radio shows now.
All right. So yeah, today we're going to interview him about the alternative media. So let's start the grilling. Okay, here's the first question. How do you define alternative media, and what do you think its purpose is?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a difficult one to answer so directly, because I think there are a lot of terms here. And first of all, I think it's important to be suspicious of labels. Anytime you have a label, someone can call themselves alternative when in fact they're a mainstream or a corporate news source. So there are a lot of terms here. There's mainstream media, there's corporate media, alternative, underground. Even with music, you had underground, which sort of became the alternative music, but of course that was run by the big music corporations or studios. So with the alternative media, I see it as much the same way. It's very important not to take anything at face value, whether they call themselves corporate, MSNBC, CNN, or some alternative news site on the web. What is alternative media? I guess it's an alternative to mainstream corporate media. If you're a mainstream media outlet, you really work for the corporations, or you're bound with what you can say, the news that you can deliver, just with the internal politics that come with being in that position. So they're in a situation, they're the mainstream media, but yet they have some element of responsibility to what they report. If there is an alternative media source, you might get the truth, but it might be completely, it might be hogwash too. There's no responsibility there to report or to have any or to cite sources. So that's an interesting thing too. I mean, what do you consider alternative media?
Um, that's an interesting answer. Personally, what I consider alternative media is really media that is independent. When I say independent, because you can really get into what independence is, this and the other. Really, what I mean when I say independent is it is either funded by themselves, like what kind of you're doing, what I'm doing, or um, or if they have sponsors, it isn't like these shady sponsors like GM. Like GM owns 40% of MSNBC. No real corporate sponsors, and really, I think at least me personally, I don't. When it comes to the truth, at least me personally, I don't think I have the truth, or you know, I think that I have a certain viewpoint, a certain uh, if anything, when it comes to the truth, I have a puzzle piece of the truth. I don't think we can ever get whole truth. I have a puzzle piece of it, and all I'm doing is I'm saying here, I looked at the evidence. This is what the evidence has led me to. That's all I'm telling you guys. All I'm doing is presenting you what I wrote and what I saw got, and I saw what I got from the evidence. And I think that if you're work for the mainstream media, or if you're an independent journalist, or you're an alternative media, whatever, at least I personally, that you personally do have our responsibility to not go and uh and lie to people, you know? Like, I can understand if you make a mistake, like everybody makes mistakes. Even these big media conglomerates and stuff make mistakes, but you shouldn't purposely go and lie to people, you know what I mean?
Well, of course not. I mean, you well know that the West Coast Truth. It's the name of my show is the West Coast Truth. The name of the website is westcoasttruth.com. But in no means do I think I have the truth. Unlike yourself, I can present information, but it's up to the public to decipher whether or not it's true or not. Now, I use some judgment in what I publish. It has to seem true. I do investigations into the credibility of the report. You write several articles for me. You cite everything that you write. But the West Coast Truth cannot produce truth any more than anyone else can. Truth is just an opinion. There is no truth.
Hmm.
But, for the West Coast Truth, I'm running the show. So I'm the producer, the webmaster, everything. This is a unique situation. I'm not corruptible. I don't care. I'm not going to say something for the purposes of getting ahead. I just put it out there what I believe to be the truth and to be the case. If it upsets people, that's not my problem. But at some point, if you want to expand, you're going to need advertising. That's a reality. And as soon as you get advertising, you have all the pressures that go along with that. So you can reach sort of a plateau, perhaps, a point where you're at that perfect intersection of truth and you have an audience. But if you want to exceed that, you're going to have to sell out to your advertisers. And the farther you go up, the more you got to sell off. Until you're eventually at the point where you're Fox News, you're completely sold out, and nothing can be taken at face value.
Entirely. It's always problems with advertisers, and well, the thing is, I like yeah, I like the internet. It's a new site. Everything I do with this podcast, for example, this podcast is 100% free because all the media from the software I'm using to interview you to the software I'm using to record this interview, all of it's free, and I don't think that people should have to pay for it. And I don't want to get on advertisers, not that I could get any, but you know,
But people may ask for more of the product. They'll say, we want more shows. And then you may want to deliver that to them. Then that takes more of your time. People have value. We have a worth. Unfortunately, in this world, we are run by this monetary system. I wish that weren't the case, but it is. So you will need money if you want to get to a certain threshold. Or you keep it as a hobby, which it may be its purest form.
true, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the poet on the street who has no interest in money is probably writing the best stuff there is.
Definitely, man. I kind of going off that. I went just a couple months ago to one of my friends. He has a band. I went to his basement show, and it was just for me. It was a first time experience, and it was just really cool, though. Just to see people. It was like three bands, including his, like three or four bands, including his, my friends. Nobody got paid. It was just people, just rocking out and doing what they love. And I think, like you were saying, that's probably it in its purest form. Definitely.
It's true. And you look at most artists or writers, they have done their best work by the time they're 30, until the realities of life, the realities of financial pressures, perhaps you have a family and that changes everything. Money will corrupt you. That's for sure.
Without a doubt. It's fortunately it's sad, but it's a reality. But on to the next question. How did you come to create the West Coast Truth?
Well, I was a big fan of Alex Jones. I'm not so much anymore. That's what I consider fear-based news or entertainment. So, admittedly, at the beginning, I was trying to do a poor Alex Jones imitation with the website, with the content, everything. Um, so that was my motivation to start. Of course, I've always been interested in radio. I was listening to Art Bell when I was 13 years old every night for 10 years. Even before that, I was listening to political talk radio. Never really enjoyed music, just enjoyed the conversations. My dad and I would go on long drives, listen to the radio, talk about what was said. Some shows had open lines, and then it was just total free thinking. And that really appealed to me. I'm also self-employed. I don't really like having a boss. I like to be able to think openly, freely, without any constraints, right? And this led me to start the West Coast Truth. So I want to have a radio show. I want to present news, and anybody can start a website. So I came up with the idea sometime around 10 in the morning. By 1, I'd come up with the name. By around 5 or 6, the website was up, and I was up to a few hundred people a day within a month. Yeah. And now, of course, there are thousands of people that come onto the website every day and listen to the program.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Moving fast, I see. Growing quickly.
It moves fast, but I'm an ambitious guy, right? And I don't have fear of things. That's the thing. Anybody can be successful. Every single person has the talent and the ability to be whatever or whomever they want. Generally, self-doubt will destroy you faster than anything. No belief in yourself. These are complete wastes of time. Far less important than how much money you have in your pocket is the level of confidence that you have. If you can master that, you can achieve anything.
Definitely. And also going off what you said about success. I think anybody can be successful, like you were saying, well, in the sense that it's also about how you define success on a personal level.
Well, a teacher asked the class that I was in, how do you define success? And I wrestled with that question for years. It's certainly not money. Having said that, if you're broke, that's probably the only thing that's on your mind.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
So maybe once again, like the intersection that I spoke of earlier, there might be a point where you're making just enough money, but you're not a pretentious asshole. You're making enough where all the ends are met, and therefore you can be stress-free and be a normal human being.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It definitely does make sense, It's funny, right now I'm in college. I have a part-time job, and I'll tell you the truth. I'm scared. I'm trying to do, I write for global research and everything. I write for a couple sites, but at the end of the day, I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to get a job, and I may not be able to, do that free thinking like you were just talking about. I would have loved to, but I might have to kind of put that to the side at least for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, one thing I found that it's important when you're a young man is to take jobs that teach you a life skill. So taking jobs as a cook, as a carpenter, these things teach you real life skills. So in addition to your paycheck, you're gaining an education. I feel that this is very important, and then we become stronger individuals, more confident in ourselves. And as I stated before, I feel that confidence is probably the bigger issue than anything else, even bigger than the economy.
True. So if you're unconfident in yourself, then there's nothing there.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I mean, I've been down on myself too. That's not. I'm not going to claim that I've always been confident. I've been down on myself big time, and it didn't matter how much money was thrown my way. I would have spent it all in pursuit of happiness.
Okay, so
as for how I started the West Coast Truth, it was really that simple. It was a passing thought in the morning, and by the evening I did it, and here it is today. Kind of blows my mind, and I have to be honest with you, it's kind of surreal.
I definitely get that feeling. I definitely understand you on that.
The fourth interview I'm doing with someone, I'm talking with Jacques Fresco.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if anyone, for those who don't know who that is, check out thevenusproject.com. This was the um, focus of Zeitgeist 2 and 3 was the work of Jacques Fresco. An amazing guy. He knew Einstein. Yes, he's really old, 96 years old. And that interview actually led to my brother spending a week at his house, which is actually more like a geodesic dome down in Florida. So what is the role of the alternative media? I'm not 100% sure, or what is its definition. But man, for me, it's been a real source of empowerment. And I also had Andrea Rossi on my show, who invented the world's first working home cold fusion reactor. And it has been proven. He is a candidate for the Nobel Prize. He lives in Miami, Florida now. And because I knew Jacques Fresco and I had met Andrea Rossi, who I chat with still, I introduced him to Jacques Fresco. And now 2 brilliant people in Florida are doing work together. And this is a small example of how a small idea and a little bit of confidence and add a teaspoon of ambition can really accomplish something.
Definitely. Very impressive. Very impressive. Now for the next question. What role would you say the West Coast Truth plays in the alternative media scene?
I can only gauge by the number of hits that I have on my website and its ranking relative to the other ones. That's a hard answer to give, as I don't see things from that perspective. I'm not sure I can provide that answer. I do, I'm trying to provide an outlet that people can go to that'll be totally original, because I've done some crazy shit. I've spoken to the national leader of the Ku Klux Klan. At the same time, I have the most liberal of people on my program. It's probably a little bit different than most alternative medias, because I think most of them will have an agenda. They may not want to admit that, but I think they do, whereas I don't. I really don't think one way or another. I just don't see things that way. I just see things as information. And if let's take this alternative media, if you will, what's your definition of alternative media? Would the 9/11 being an inside job, would you consider that to be an angle that the alternative media has? Would that be a truth, according to the alternative media, that 9/11 was an inside job?
It really depends on who you're talking to in the alternative media, Some people...
Exactly. So there is no continuum of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And if one website will report on 9/11 was an inside job articles, if, let's just say, there was somehow some irrefutable proof that it wasn't not an inside job, you could never persuade them otherwise. It would go against their brand, and therefore they would uphold the lie. And in truth, they are not a news source at all. They're as much of a propaganda outlet as anything else. But they'll bank, or they'll use the industry of the 9/11 movement to succeed in life, to hitch their wagon to some star.
True. Very true. Always.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Same with the Occupy people. If you were able to convince them of an opposing ideology, they may very well agree with you, but disregard it, because it's just not the group that they're in with.
Mm.
People like to be a brand. They like to be a logo. They like to wear a shirt. They like to be a part of a group of people.
Well, I'll have to disagree with you slightly with Occupy, because originally I get a lot of my Occupy coverage from another alternative media source, Citizen Radio. And, well, I don't know really about the state of Occupy now, ideologically speaking. At least during the beginning, it was a ton of different people, It was mainly you have pissed off liberals, but also you have anarchists and the like, and at least now they're trying to kick out the anarchist influence. But I do get what you're saying. At the exact same time, they can go and dismiss certain ideologies. However, kind of Occupy, at least in its beginning stages, and it still seems that way kind of, is not really about a specific political party or
Hmm.
um, really a specific ideology. You know, it's kind of indefinable in a way. But you,
That's true. But if you notice that the mainstream media made it that issue within about a
yeah,
week,
yeah,
so they could fragment society, right? It's a left wing issue. This is a union thing. You see how the unions get in on that,
yeah,
right? And then you fractionalize society. Now all the right wingers don't like Occupy. You get the people fighting with each other.
true, and all that.
So they make it a left wing issue, and then unfortunately Occupy 6 months down the road is a left wing issue because you've eventually turned off all the right wingers, and it does become this anarchist thing, which is absolute nonsense.
Mm,
Like I went to the Occupy here in Vancouver, and the place was rife with anarchists, if you will. But within a week, this Occupy had a government. There were people running it, there were treasurers, everything. Within a week, it was already starting to look like a microcosm of a regular, ordinary, corruptible government. And then you might have to ask yourself, maybe the government is a natural extension of what humans would always do. It's not just a power interest group. This is just what people do. They form governments, become clannish, and like delegate orders.
mm, maybe so. I I personally don't like to think that. I personally don't think that, but mm, I could
It's
be.
hard to know,
Yeah,
though, right?
it's definitely hard to
How do
know.
we know what man is like in his original state? We wouldn't have that ability.
Yeah, definitely. On to the next question. Why do you think more and more people seem to be turning to the alternative media?
Well, I hope I can swear
Yes, you can
because,
swear all you want.
well,
Free
fuck me.
speech.
Because the mainstream media is full of shit. Everything and anything they say is essentially a lie or a piece of propaganda used to push some corporate interest. People are smarter than corporations think, a lot smarter actually, and people are getting turned off. People are dying of cancer. From the information that I have, cancer is a totally treatable, totally curable, totally preventable problem. The mainstream media would never agree with that. They would always push some cancer foundation that you're supposed to give money to. They would never bring up alternative medicines like apple cider vinegar or honey or sea kelp or turmeric. They might, but they would sort of laugh it off. And now, in some lighthearted news, we turmeric apparently did, yeah, and they have a little chuckle over it, but it's sort of dismissed, or they might use it as a footnote story at the end of the um, indoctrination period. And I think that's what people are wise to, that this is indoctrination. And, the stuff that we're watching on CNN is as bad as the stuff that they're showing the Chinese from their government perspective. Everything is an indoctrination. Everything is psyop.
Unfortunately, it's true. We have these media outlets which people trust so much, and then can turn around and say, hey, these people actively lie. The New York Times lied about the war in Iraq, and they were saying, oh, there's weapons of mass destruction there, and the other mainstream media were pushing, oh, there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and yet it was proven to be a
Mm-hmm.
lie, and yet people still trust them. Look at
Well, maybe there was mass weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but they don't want to admit that because it says Boeing or Lockheed Martin on the side of the missile. That would be the other lie they don't want to admit, that they sold the weapons to Saddam Hussein, which of course we all know anyway. So of course they have weapons of mass destruction. We sold them to them.
true, quite true.
There might be that angle to it that you might not think.
That is another. I hadn't thought of that possibility. I had not thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, everything is about how it's going to be perceived in the public. Some assholes might get into a room and they'll look at some graphs and they'll have a chart and they'll do a sampling group and they'll say, well, you know what? It turns out that it's better to make George Bush look like a complete dysfunctional asshole than it is to admit to the American public that our weapons manufacturers that truly run the governments have been funding Saddam Hussein, and this is all a big ruse to sell more weapons and to build more and dump old artillery.
Hmm.
And I mean, the news is not news; it's just paid advertising. It's an
Definitely.
infomercial. It's an infomercial, whether it be for Monsanto or whomever, or for the next war that they're cooking up. I mean, I knew Syria was coming years before it came. A lot of people did. Libya is going to come down. You know that they're going to kill Gaddafi just with the rhetoric that they start spewing out. That's an easy one. You can follow the media and you can see how they start putting out news stories about different countries, and then well, down the line, there's a war coming. They need to set the foundation for the public. Need to create that enemy.
Yeah, just like we're seeing the creation of the enemy of for quite some time with Iran. Iran's.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that Iran is trying to get nuclear weapons. I have yet to see any actual evidence, though.
Well, yeah, I mean they've got everybody looking at them. Why would they even want to do that? I mean, I talked to somebody about that. They said, well, because Iran wants to have a seat at the table. As soon as you have nukes, you have a seat at the table. As though nukes were the epitome of weaponry now in the 21st century. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but nuclear weapons have been around for a long time. Yeah. Last time I learned, they're well past that shit, and they've got stuff that can affect entire countries, entire continents, electrical systems. They can put a disease into the population. So many things that are far more wretched than the nuke. However, the public reacts to nuclear weaponry. That's a fear-based trigger that they've already given the public. So when they say Iran's going to get nukes, people react to that with the intended purpose of being, afraid of them.
Yeah,
But funny enough as well, Ahmadinejad doesn't even run that country. And I don't hear the supreme leader saying anything ignorant. We do hear Ahmadinejad saying the odd moronic thing.
Sure.
I wonder if he's not placed there by the West just to bolster that whole boogeyman image.
Possibly. But yeah, like I said, I haven't seen any proof like you're saying. There are much more sophisticated ways. We've gone to the point where you can go and you can screw over people's economies. Do a couple of cyber hacks, cyber attacks. Boom. The economy is done. So
that's right. Economic terrorism, 100%. You want it, or you can destroy the character of a person. You don't have to assassinate anyone. All you got to do is hack their computer down or upload some child pornography into that and destroy a person's reputation for life.
Without a doubt.
You know what I mean? There are far easier ways than nuclear bombs, which actually screw everybody over.
Yeah. It's a lose-lose game.
Absolutely. Only the threat of nuclear weapons has strength.
Yeah.
Everything else doesn't work. I mean, that was even in Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. On to the second to last question. Regarding the alternative media, you'll hear a lot of the alternative media. Oh, the mainstream media, they're liars, they're deceivers. And like you were saying, it's true. There's a lot of truth to that. But at the exact same time, they'll slam the mainstream media, but then in that same episode or another episode or whatever, they'll use the mainstream media as a source to back up what they're saying. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, like I said before, it's everyone has a brand, they have an institution, and they don't want that to go away. We have a monetary system. It's hard to create an image, a logo, and then the first thing you want to do is protect it. Now look at Alex Jones, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says everything under the sun. Now, if you listen to one of his programs, you'll get the impression that the FEMA guys are going to come down and take all your guns, throw you in some massive imprisonment camp, and basically we're going to enter some sort of Holocaust scenario. But then when it doesn't happen, he'll say we're winning the info war. You see, if it wasn't for us, this would have happened already. So he plays both sides of the coin. When it doesn't happen, it's because we were on the ball and we as a society prevented it. When it does happen, he says, "See, I showed you. I told you." He can't lose, and he pays hundreds of thousands of dollars every month to keep that brand that he has going. And that psychological trick that I've just talked about is how it works. And you're right. People do cite the mainstream media when it suits their purpose. Well, even Fox News said such and such and such. And then in the same breath, as you're saying, they'll discredit them entirely. You can't trust anything they say, unless it backs up my argument.
Human folly, it seems, and hubris. Now on to the last question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the most important thing you ever learned from having on so many different and interesting guests?
Yeah. Well, I could look at each one of them individually and say, here's 100 different things I learned from each one of them. But looking at them all as a collection, let's put it this way. Many of the things that I thought I knew going in, I realize I didn't know. Conspiracies are generally unsubstantiated, are not true. So that's a big part of it. I found out that a lot of these conspiracy theorists really don't have a lot of information. They just want to object to things. That every single person has value, that has something different to say. You can't judge people, like people are products of their environment, where they were raised. If you're raised in Paris, you have a French accent. If you're raised in New York, you have a New York accent, obviously. So we're just products of our environment. Everybody has something interesting to say. I don't know if I have anything more poignant than that.
All right. Still.
I have to think about it a little bit more.
Still.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this. The mainstream media, if that's to be the theme of this conversation and how it relates to the alternative media, they're not reporting anything substantial. Let's put it that way. On the front page of the Vancouver Sun here, I live in Vancouver on the West Coast, they're talking about the ferry rates, the increase to the ferry rate.
Mm-hmm.
But here in British Columbia, we've lost half of our trees in the last 15 years due to the bark beetle. That should be front page news. And what we can do to solve these problems, or all the bees dying. There are real things that each one of us can do in our daily lives that can save the bees. That's what the news should be reporting. They're not a solution-based network of concerned individuals. They're just, like I said, these are infomercials, paid advertising. I don't care what the story is or if it looks like an ad or not. It's all advertising. If it really wanted to make a difference, if it really cared, it would present solutions. But it never presents solutions. It presents salacious headlines that are intended to make you purchase the paper tomorrow.
Unfortunately, that is quite true. All right, so that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for the interview, Russell. It's been very interesting.
I hope it works for you, bud.
Thanks.
I appreciate being on the show.
All right.